We start the second segment of the workshop, which is on diversity of knowledge and the importance of role of people and knowledge holders in diversity of knowledge. So for this segment, I would request our eminent speakers to please be seated on the stage. I would request Dr. Vishwajanani Satyagiri, Dr. Anamika Dey, and Professor Anil Gupta to please join me on the stage. By the time our speakers join us on the stage, I will start with introducing our first speaker, Dr. Vishwajanani Satyagiri. She will be speaking about diversity of knowledge from policy lens. Dr. Vishwajanani is a senior scientist and head of Traditional Knowledge Digital Library Unit of CSIR. She spearheaded the expansion of scope and user base of the TKDL unit of CSIR. Dr. Vishwajanani has 30 publications and 22 patent applications to her credit. She will be speaking about diversity of knowledge from policy lens. Over to you, Dr. Satyagiri.
Namaste to everyone. At the outset, I'd like to thank Professor Sood, the Office of the PSA, Chagun, and Dakshata for this wonderful platform. It's indeed gratifying to see that the Dialogue 2023 on expanding S&T horizons also includes traditional knowledge. It's indeed wonderful. So while we believe that, traditional knowledge is fundamental to everything, it's often a neglected domain. The reason we are having this discussion is to see how we could also include traditional knowledge in the larger scheme of things when we are talking of advanced technologies like artificial intelligence and the other digital technologies that we talked this morning. So when we are talking of traditional knowledge and when we are looking towards expanding the S&T domains, what is it that we are looking at? It's about inclusion. Inclusion of those communities, those indigenous and local communities who are the custodians of the knowledge, and also the knowledge that has already been codified in texts and manuscripts and other kinds. So in this context of where we are today as a global competitor, India stands strong because we have a great foundation of traditional knowledge. But when we are speaking of traditional knowledge, what also concerns us about the rights of the people, the rights of the nation in the context of the information. So that is where the policies do come important. Typically, when we are talking of traditional knowledge, as one of the speakers in the morning also mentioned that India has always been having the back foot when it comes to expressing its strength. And I think traditional knowledge is also one of the areas where we've been kind of shy in expressing our strength about, focusing on growth and development based on our traditions and culture. The importance of traditional knowledge, India understood when it became a subject matter of misappropriation or biopiracy, to put it in. So what does it mean? Somebody is gaining knowledge, the rights, the ownership of our traditions and culture, and that is when we recognize that we should have been the rightful owners of such knowledge. And that is what we faced in the mid-90s. The story of Haldi, Basmati, Neem, and many kinds must be known to all of you. So the government of India took an initiative to step in and see what is it that we can do to protect our traditional knowledge. And that's the initiative that I'm heading, the Traditional Knowledge Digital Library. So here the TKDL provides a value-added information of our traditions, traditional knowledge, currently focused on the codified text, and we are focused on the Indian systems of medicine. So when the target for the TKDL was set up initially in the year 2001, it was merely 14,000 formulations from Ayurveda to say that we have covered our traditional knowledge in its entirety. Today we stand at 4.5 lakh formulations from across the systems of medicine, that is Ayurveda, Unani, Siddha, So were required, of course, some yoga techniques as well. And we're still counting. So the vastness of our traditional knowledge is, I mean, through the TKDL currently is only a glimpse of what we can do and also gather. I think the speakers before me, Annapurna and Uzrama, also mentioned about the textile technologies. And it's not limited to just these two fields, it's much more. So what is it that we are looking at from a policy perspective and also as an initiative? So India does not have any sui generis legal systems to protect TK per se. But we do have indirect frameworks, and some of this can be categorized as both defensive form of protection as well as positive form of protection. So when I talk of defensive form of protection, it is to retain our rights, our ownership to our traditions and culture, and defend it from being property of somebody else. But when I talk of positive protection, it is about not only protecting the rights, but also empowering the communities to have a livelihood, a retained livelihood of what they have been practicing over the years. So the Patent Act of 1970 with its amendment in 2000 is a defensive form of protection of our traditional knowledge through section 3P, which prevents any traditional knowledge from being patented. But the positive frameworks are what we are looking at currently, because that is what empowers the communities. So there are indirect ways, though, as I said, there's no direct frameworks, no direct legal framework to protect our traditional knowledge. Some of them include the geographical indications, which is again in intellectual property rights, copyrights in the form of, protecting our traditional cultural expressions, plant varieties protections that includes even the farmers' varieties and as well as the land races, and of course the Scheduled Tribe and Forest Rights Act. In addition to all of this, there is a very important framework in the country, that is the Biological Diversity Act, that protects the traditional knowledge associated with the genetic resources. So the Act stipulates the access and use of genetic resources and the associated traditional knowledge. So for people who are applying for intellectual property rights, you have to disclose the source of the genetic resource as well as the knowledge. When you're transferring technology, you have to take the permission of the NBA and so on and so forth. So this is all good. So what is it that we are talking today in terms of the policy? So here, as the TKDL, I'm very glad to inform that, while we're talking of traditional knowledge, ours is not a mere translation or transliteration of our traditional knowledge. It's a value-added database. We bring in a concordance between the traditional terminologies and the modern parlance. And here we try to standardize and normalize the heterogeneity that is available in our traditional text while maintaining the distinctness. And this is to kind of provide a legal framework to protect our traditional knowledge from misappropriation. But moving forward, there's much more to be done. We are expanding the scope of the TKDL to include other domains like agriculture, metallurgy, and others, and also the oral traditional knowledge. When I speak of oral traditional knowledge, the national IPR policy clearly states include oral TK in the database, but make sure that the lives are not compromised. So we are putting together a guidance document, very ably mentored by Professor Anil Gupta, wherein the three cardinal principles that we are looking at is the free and prior informed consent of the knowledge holders who are the actual custodians of such knowledge, the acknowledgement and recognition, so attribution of this knowledge is rightly assigned to the knowledge holders, and last but not the least is the access and benefit sharing. Some of it is already included in the Biological Diversity Act, but there's no standard protocol followed by everyone in the country. So we are trying to bring this and make it mandatory in the CSIR to follow an ethical process. Moving forward, from a policy perspective, that is what Chagan had asked me to speak about. As I mentioned, there's no sui generis legal system in the country to protect traditional knowledge. So from a policy perspective, I think that is very important. Traditional knowledge is part of many policies in the country. As I mentioned, the national IPR policy, the national education policy, and many kinds. But moving forward, I think we would need one specifically targeted at traditional knowledge, and I'm hoping that the office of the PSA would look at it. TKDL would be there to support you. While we are looking at all of this, there are many ways in which traditional knowledge and the communities have been empowered in the last several years. In fact, today we have many Padma Shri awardees who are, knowledge holders of traditional practices. But there needs to be a self-regulation in terms of the ethical practices, and that is something that I think the office of the PSA can also look into in terms of ensuring that perhaps there is a centralized point at every state or maybe at every district, if it is possible, to see what are the legal methods of empowering the community while making them aware of their rights to such knowledge. And at the national level, of course, as I said, we need to have administrative processes, legal processes, education and awareness, and a legally binding instrument. At the World Intellectual Property Organization, under the Intergovernmental Committee, there's been a lot of deliberations being held since 2001. Still, there's been no resolution or agreement arrived at by all the member countries. I think moving forward, perhaps India should take a stronger stand. We've always been holding a strong stand in terms of the TK. We should have a stronger stand. And at the diplomatic conference that is scheduled in 2024, I think India should make a very strong statement on TK that would empower not only our country, but similar countries like us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vishwajanani, for taking us through the policy landscape around traditional knowledge systems, and also wonderfully structuring your talk by speaking about the enablers, policy gaps, while also suggesting the potential pathways through which the traditional knowledge systems and traditional knowledge could be widely recognized and widely accessible to the larger masses. With this, I would like to introduce our next speaker, Professor Anil K. Gupta. Professor Anil Gupta is a founder of Honeybee Network, Srishti, Gyan, NIF, and a visiting faculty at IIM Ahmedabad and IIT Bombay. Professor Anil Gupta's research interest lies at expanding global, national, and local space for grassroots innovators and inventors, also creating knowledge networks for augmenting innovations. Through Honeybee Network, he supported 2 lakh ideas, innovations, and examples of traditional knowledge. Over to you, Professor Anil Gupta.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. She asked me to focus on a problem of sink to source. And I will try to confine to that, not easy, because for a long time we have considered the communities, common people, as sink of advice, assistance, aid, but seldom have we treated them as source of ideas, source of knowledge, source of innovations, some of which can extend the frontiers of science and technology. That is the most exciting part. If it was just a coping strategy of people and we appreciate their acumen, their ingenuity, then matter would be simpler. But when this knowledge system, in some cases, can extend the frontiers of science, I think it demands attention. But there is a problem. There are 3 problems which the knowledge system, which creates innovations, contemporary innovations, but also carries forward traditional knowledge with improvements by every generation. See, many times people believe that traditional knowledge is something which is fossilized form of knowledge produced by forefathers at one time and carried forward in the same form. There could be nothing farther from truth. There are many plants which were introduced in India about 20 years ago. Subabuli is one of them, or 30 years ago. And a lot of knowledge has evolved around those plants. When Mrs. Gandhi gave neem trees to some of the African countries, there was no prior knowledge in that country. And after some time in the local markets, people started observing soaps being made of oil from the neem seed. Independently developed knowledge in a country where a species did not exist before, but once it was brought in, the traditional ways of knowing brought in this kind of experimental ethic, reinforced the experimental ethic and generated solutions, which, if there was a cross-pollination, as Honeybee Network has been trying to advocate, probably their task would have been easier. Now, what is the challenge here? Challenge is, in this conference room, assume for a minute that there are 2 or 3 people sitting who are taking notes of the conference. And after the conference, they publish a paper claiming authorship of all the ideas that everybody has shared. How would you feel about that? You will feel appalled. How can that be done? But this has been done. This has been done systematically, formally, legitimately by the profession of ethnobiologist, ethnobotanist, and other people who have gone to the communities, collected their knowledge, published papers, became famous, people became anonymous. Nobody knows the name of any one of them. And not only that, these papers were never shared in the local language with those people. And if you got a royalty from a book and or a consultancy for a work from a company, herbal drug company, which wants you to use this knowledge to develop some leads for developing herbal drugs, we were not obliged to share the part of the consultancy income with the communities whose knowledge you documented. All of this has been happening professionally. It is happening even today. University Grants Commission, AICTE, or ICSSR, Indian Council of Social and such, none of them have developed guidelines yet. And that's my appeal to the PSA office. That one of the major impact of today's meeting should be that all these scientific regulatory bodies must be obliged to develop guidelines which will provide an ethical and a moral way and a professional way of dealing with knowledge of communities, individuals, grassroots innovators, and others. And I will describe that in a minute as to what these principles could be, which we have developed 35 years ago. Principles are very clear. First principle is, if you write proceeding of this conference, you cite different people, attribute them for whatever they have said. That's the right way to do it. So do the same thing with the people. Do the same thing with lab attendants. If lab attendant has given an idea, quote, cite that person. Just because the person is a worker, is in a position of less power, does not mean that you can anonymize that person. So within the system and outside the system, those who lack power should not become anonymous. Just because they cannot change our condition, there is an asymmetric relationship between their power and our power. Second thing is that whatever we do with that knowledge, document it, sometimes we do experiments in our lab, must be summarized in a local language and given back to those people. The third principle is that we must do cross-pollination. We should share, just as we come to the conference, we got so many ideas since morning from each other. Similar opportunities should be given to people to learn from each other, which is only possible in local languages. So farmer in Odisha cannot learn from farmer in Tamil Nadu if Tamil language practice or idea is not translated into Oriya language. That's why Honeybee Network, Honeybee Newsletter, we've tried to bring out in few of the Indian languages. And fourth is that if any income or reward accrues, monetary reward accrues to us because of the knowledge that we have documented, a reasonable share of it should go back to the people whose knowledge made it possible. These are the 4 principles with which Honeybee Network started 35 years ago, 35 years ago. And the regret is The positive side is that large number of people got presidential award. We organized Festival of Innovation at Presidents of India's House. Now it's called Festival of Innovation and Entrepreneurship, FINE. Earlier it was called FOIN. And this year, April, again, the current president has also started again hosting the Festival of Innovation and Entrepreneurship. So that is a great award. That's a great satisfaction. What is the frustration? The frustration, as I said at the beginning, is that still the profession, the science and technology profession, the educational system does not behave in a manner that will give us a feeling that pluralistic way of treating knowledge with respect has been accepted as a right way of doing business, right way of doing our work. That has not yet happened. But I'm sure with PSA's office support, this will happen sooner than later. Whatever may not have happened doesn't matter, but even now if it happens, India will be one of the few countries which would have ordained this policy in our statutes. Now, what are the challenges in the knowledge system itself? First of all, the knowledge that is produced by the common people, whether out of biodiversity or other materials, may be sometime requiring approval of the peers. And this approval comes in the form of recognition that they give to the experts. Once in Karnataka, in Malnad region, we had a Shodh Yatra, and there was an elderly person who knew some practices for treating a particular disease, so we were all talking to him. And after some time, a young person got up and he said, I also know this practice. Why are you giving so much importance to this old man? We said, well, wait a minute. So we asked, who are the people who suffered from this problem in the last 3 months? Some hands went up. Who did you go to, this young boy or this elderly man? And they said, we went to the elderly man. So I said, it is not just the solution, it is also the ability to diagnose and tailor the dose of the medicine to the condition that the person has. And this is skill, my dear young friend, you may not have yet acquired, with this great old man has acquired already. And he understood. Everybody laughed, but he understood that, yes, why we were respecting them, respecting this person was because he had this ability to tailor the solution to the need of the person, which the young man had not yet acquired. So there is a professional way in which knowledge system evolves. But at the same time, this knowledge is also very fragmented. We have noticed there are experiments that farmers have done, and on the field, in the fields bordering a particular field in which experiment was done, the farmer did not know about this. So just imagine when distance is 0, knowledge has not traveled beyond the boundary of the field. There have been cases like that. 10 kilometers away, we asked somebody, what do you use this plant for? And they didn't know the use that somebody else had developed in another neighboring village. So there is a lot of fragmentation in the knowledge. At the same time, some knowledge is very universal. You ask a European, what do you do when you have throat infection? People will say, we take honey with ginger. Almost in any country you go, this knowledge is evident, that people will know that ginger extract with honey will soothe the throat. So but don't assume that this has gone from India to all the countries. Simultaneously, many times, given the same challenge, people develop similar solutions. This happens in science, this can also happen in the informal knowledge system, and has happened many times in the informal knowledge system, called concept of simultaneous innovation. So the question is that if this knowledge has evolved and has not diffused in many places, but has diffused in other places, there is no particular reason that we should attribute it to, except that there are infirmities in the communication and diffusion system, which require us to deal with this problem, and therefore do not invalidate something because it has not diffused, because a lot of people have not validated it, because a lot of people have not come to know of it. That cannot be the reason for rejecting a practice which is niche-based, which is based sometime in a single family, not even the community. So such cases, we have to make exceptions. Now, let us look at the next challenge. A lot of people develop they design machines, complex machines. Recently, Sanjay Tilwa, one of the innovators with whom Gyan works, developed 2 machines, groundnut digger and a groundnut thresher, mobile groundnut thresher. So first machine will dig out the groundnut, peanut, from the ground, and the second machine will move over it, pick it up, thrash it, separate the biomass and the pod, And if there is some powder which is wasted, it will throw it on the ground, soil, so the soil is fertilized. You ask somebody a question, how did you make this? What is your qualification? He's a BA, arts, no engineering qualification. Did you make a drawing? He did not make any drawing. Then how did all these components fall in place? Now this skill of designing a complex machine costing about 12 lakh rupees without having a blueprint on a piece of paper is a skill that scientists may not have. And scientists need to learn this. You go to a vegetable vendor and tell him, I need 200 grams of chili, half a kg of potato, 300 grams or 400 grams of lady's finger, and you give some 5-6 orders, he puts all of them together and he gives you the amount which you have to pay. Calculating that by fraction, unit price into fraction, into weight, weighing, all of this, if we did by calculator, it will take us more time than what the vegetable vendor takes. This is something we need to learn. How is this illiterate person able to multiply fraction with unit cost so fast in real time? And with four customers are standing, and each one of them, he's telling them different price for different things. He's able to total them. So there is obviously a skill that some people have, not only just in technological science, but also mathematical science, or arithmetic science. And we need to appreciate that. So where does it lead us to? What are the issues where we can now take it forward? One issue that we can take it forward is that we should try and see where bridges can be built. So, for example, in Andhra Pradesh, when they transplant tobacco seedling, they take a pot of milk and they put their hand in the milk because the virus, the tobacco mosaic virus, gets inactivated when you put your hand in the milk. In Gujarat, when there's a foot and mouth disease, people put milk on the hoofs of the cattle. When I had a pain in my ear when I was a child, late 50s, landlady put her breast milk in my ear. I mentioned three examples to the All India Conference on Biochemistry and Plant Physiology way back in 80s. And one doctoral student from CCMB, Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology, a CSIR lab, Tatananda, came to me and said, I asked them, what is the connection between these three things? And he said, sir, both viruses, TMV and foot and mouth, are type 2 RNA virus. And milk has RNase enzyme and a protease. Maybe the protein coat is cut first, and then RNase enzyme inactivates the milk. Now, this hypothesis doesn't exist in literature for controlling a viral disease and requires further research. But it is at molecular level, submolecular level, that's what we are talking about. That means the knowledge system of the people could give us new ideas. And where does this knowledge appear on the website? Department of Ontario, I will request you, those of you who are interested in this milk example, write in the search window, Ontario Department of Agriculture, milk as a viral control, and you will find this advised on the site of Department of Agriculture, Ontario, Canada, as to how, compared to all the possible solutions, because there is no solution for controlling viral disease, compared to the chemicals that you may have, this is as effective, if not more effective. So your tools which you use for dealing with the plants having viral disease, please wash them with milk to disinfect them. Written on the website. India has not done it. We have many validated knowledge. This knowledge is from all the three examples, I took it from India. Our website on veterinary medicine or for plant agriculture will not mention this because it looks like backward. It looks like going back. You know, if you give a simple solution, it seems like number jumbo. But Ontario didn't feel that. Canada didn't feel that. They gave to the farmer a solution which is cost-effective, frugal, and at the same time scientifically seems to be working. Why should we not then share this solution? Because it's as good as anything else possible. So I would say that we should try and develop a very major program of building bridges between community knowledge, people's knowledge, grassroots innovations, and the modern science. A very major mission. Just like PSA mentioned in the morning about ocean mission, deep ocean mission, and other mission, there should be a major mission with maybe 1,000 crore or 5,000 crore rupees of fund, because knowledge is so much. A few experiments will take us many centuries to be able to do justice to this knowledge system. So we need to have a major program on that. Second thing is that if you look at the textbooks of school, CBSE, NCERT, There are hardly 3 or 4 lessons based on the solutions or innovations that common people have developed. Hardly 3 or 4. Can we include more lessons in the textbook, right from school education, so children get inspired that there are multiple ways of solving problem. This is also one of the ways of solving problem, and we must take inspiration from it and try to see how we can improve it. Third thing that we need to do is that we need to really look at our policies of IP protection. Vishwa Janani just told you that there is a provision in our Indian Patent Act that traditional knowledge cannot be patented. We have patented it. We have patented in India, we have patented in the US, but we don't call it traditional knowledge. We call it innovations. Because knowledge which is not available in the publications which patent office will search, which is not documented, there is no evidence that it is traditional knowledge, except with the community that may have developed this solution. Why do we deprive them of their right to protect their knowledge? Just because some groups in the country lobbied for keeping this knowledge out of the property right regime. We have filed patents in USA, and TKDL had objected it to that at that time, and we got the patent in USA for a typhoid drug. And similarly for many other problems. So I would say that we need to revisit these laws, and I would agree with Vishwa Janani that if we can give it lifelong protection, but that may not be possible in the legal regime that is globally agreed. At least we give it for 20 years, and we give them right for derivative innovations forever. We don't call that as evergreening as we call it in the modern science and system. Lastly, I would suggest that there is a need for us to look at the science underlying these innovations, where we can see how there are different ways by which problems can be solved. All of us know that the bed used for delivering a child in hospital is a horizontal bed. But the best position for a woman, for a mother to give birth to a child is a squatting position. In fact, tribal people in BR Hills in Karnataka, Solega tribal, they will have a rope on the top. Mother will hold the rope and let the child come out very smoothly without any cesarean. Today, 90% births are almost cesarean. Unfortunately, we are doing violence with the body of the lady, mother. Not necessary at all. So the design of the delivery bed should change, because that is the right way of doing things. That there is a proper way of delivering child. And this way is scientific. The last example I'm giving just now, just for your information, is we met a midwife in Jharkhand during our Shodh Yatra. We have been walking in different parts of the country. We have walked through every state of the country, from Andaman to Gurej Valley. And this lady said, you have the delivery in lighted room. Delivery should take place in dark room with just 1 or 2 lamps. The child has been in the womb for 9 months in the dark room. Suddenly when you deliver in the light, the child gets frightened and eyes get affected. Second thing she said, that when you have to cut the umbilical cord, cut it when the pulsation has stopped. Till it is pulsating, the child is taking nutrition from the mother. Don't cut it. There is a shock. She said, doctors don't listen to me. Why don't doctors listen to her? Why don't they listen to her? Because it is considered a lower quality of knowledge, a knowledge which is not worthy of scientific respect. But if scientists, empathetic scientists, public-spirited scientists look at this issue and they say, well, what she is saying is true, then change your education book in medical education. Change your design education, change the medical system differently. So I hope that this conference is not just an event, it's the beginning of a process when the respect for pluralistic system of knowledge will begin to take place more systematically than it has happened so far. While NIF has tried to file patents, but how many? Out of 300,000 knowledge pieces, hardly 1,200 patents have been filed. So therefore, it is not enough to be able to give due credit, but I must give credit to the scientist. Not one scientist charged for their time while validating the knowledge of the people before we gave awards to them. All the scientists did it pro bono. Some did not charge even for consumables. That, of course, you can call it both as a social and ethical capital of a network, but also a great contribution of the scientists. Similarly, the lawyers did not charge for their time when filing patents. So we have had a great public contribution to this cause, that we have been pursuing for the last 35 years. But policy changes and institutional changes are still left. Thank you so much.